What up, my nerds? I'm Ricardo, the roleplay gamer, and I like to party. So on a fairly regular basis, almost weekly, I get quite a few people sliding into my DMs asking for advice on roleplaying in general, or more specifically on starting their own roleplay series. And the advice I usually give has more to do with preparation, just knowing your character and knowing what you want to do in any given video. But I think there's something that's even more important than that and is useful to everyone who wants to roleplay. And this doesn't mean that you have to dress up like a wizard, boot up Skyrim and get like really deep into it and live in your parents' basement for the rest of your life. No. As long as you're mindful of a character's backstory and motivations, you're role-playing. Even something as simple as using a bed, going to sleep for any period of time in Skyrim, it's a mechanic that really is not necessary for you to complete the game in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, it gives a bonus, but it's not significant. So as far as I'm concerned, if you ever use a bed in Skyrim, hey buddy, guess what? You're role-playing. So what's this super important advice I promised you? The single most important question to ask when role-playing. And do keep in mind, this is just my opinion. I'd be really interested to see what you think, what your advice would be to these people struggling with role-playing in general. But my take on the subject, my advice is to ask yourself, what would my character do in this situation? Whenever you're stumped by a dialogue option or a choice of any kind, some sort of combat encounter, if you feel like you're slipping out of the roleplay a little bit and you're just going through the motions, you're just hacking and slashing and whatever, depending on what the game is, especially if you're doing a roleplay video and you feel like you can no longer call this roleplay because you're just playing and talking, depending how you've structured the video, I encourage you to ask yourself, what would my character do in this situation? And you'd be surprised how much that helps. And if you find yourself struggling to answer this question, well, this just highlights that you need to think more about your character's motivations. And I'm not just talking about backstory, but backstory can be a great informer of motivation. But you've got to know what your character wants in this world, And short of every last one of you telling me what kind of character you want to make and then me guiding you through the process, aside from the fact that that's incredibly time consuming and I don't have the time for that, and also like, who the fuck am I? Like, I'm some sort of expert on the matter. I'm sure there are much more qualified people to help you out with that sort of thing. But short of doing that, I think your best bet, if you are really struggling with coming up with authentic motivations and backstories for your character, is just to start with you. When I'm really stumped, I go, all right, what kind of character I want to make? If it's as simple as I want a guy in heavy armor who wields a mace, well then I think, all right, why do I as a human being like that? Why do I want to make a character like that? Well, maybe I'm feeling a little bit aggressive today. Maybe my masculinity was threatened and I want to enforce it and overcompensate for, let's not get into that, but you know what I mean, right? So you are role-playing these characters. There always is going to be an element of you in them because you've created the character, right? So there's, at least in my opinion, there is nothing wrong with putting even a lot of yourself into the character and saying, hey, yeah, this character is me. That can actually help if you admit that. It can totally help, because then when you get to a situation, you get to a bandit camp and you go, oh shit, would my character actually attack these bandits? Would I do it? If I were a mercenary, would I do it? If I were a simple trader, would I do it? If I were an evil necromancer who wanted to enslave the world as corpses, would I do it? And suddenly you've gone from trying to guess the motivation of a stranger to simply searching your feelings. Luke, I am your father. Use the Force. Put away your targeting. Put it away. I don't want to see that goddamn targeting computer anywhere. Here. Or elsewhere. You got it? Good. So for those of you specifically watching this video because you want to start making roleplay videos yourself, firstly, I say kudos to you. It takes balls to put your roleplay content out there on YouTube, and it's not easy. And I don't say this to discourage you, but I would encourage you to think about what kind of roleplay video you want to make. In my opinion, there are a couple choices. There is arguably the more prevalent form of roleplay, which is full in-character roleplay, which I believe is very difficult to do in video games. Now, the reason for this, in my opinion, is because your character is more often than not alone and you haven't got anyone to talk to. And even if you do have companions, like when was the last time you came across a companion you could actually have a conversation with, right? They're very repetitive and don't really have anything interesting to say, especially if we're talking about the likes of Skyrim. So what you're going to end up doing, unless you are like super creative with it and you've come up with something that like no one's ever seen before, what you're probably going to end up doing is monologuing a lot, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But you know, just keep that in mind and realize that, yeah, oh shit, how much role-playing can you do if you haven't got someone to talk to? So I would actually encourage you, if at all possible, if you got a buddy who wants to do it with you, who's also interested in role-playing and doesn't mind being up on the internet, or maybe wants to start a channel of their own, why not try some role-play with a friend? Jump into any sort of multiplayer, vaguely multiplayer RPG, or hey, it doesn't even have to be an RPG. I'd like to talk about at some point applying role-playing to non-role-playing games. That's something that I like to do, and it's it's lots of fun. Yeah, so just like grab a friend and bounce off each other. You know, you can have a loose backstory. Like, I'm not going to plan the thing for you. You can talk it over yourselves and decide how you want to approach it. But that, I believe, is going to be so much easier and probably a lot more fun than just talking to yourself for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, right? So the second approach is actually something I've only ever seen on my own channel. And this is not to toot my own horn. I just personally haven't found anyone else doing this sort of roleplay, and I know there's a little bit of debate as to whether or not this is roleplay, but basically I'm talking about my Let's Roleplay videos. Long story short, I didn't really want to do some full in-character roleplays. I had tried them, and whether it's just not my cup of tea or that style of video is inherently introspective and indulgent, which I think it can be depending on who's doing it, or maybe, you know what, hey, guess what? Maybe I was just bad at it. That's distinctly possible. But in any case, I tried some of those videos and I didn't like them. I didn't like the way I did them, and I didn't want to really continue with that. So I thought, hey, why not mix a Let's Play and a roleplay into this sexual love child and call it a Let's Roleplay? And essentially, you are, for the most part, talking in your own voice as you as a human, but you're still making decisions for the character based on the character's backstory, motivation, their goals, etc. So you can still get to those points where there's the proverbial bandit camp from my previous examples at the beginning of the video. There's the bandit camp and you go, okay, what would my character do in this situation? And in that case, you can literally ask, what would my character do in this situation? And hey, if you're streaming it, that could be a really cool audience participation sort of gimmick going on there. But essentially, I figure if you look to tabletop role-playing games, you're not in character voicing your character 100% of the time. And this is something I've experienced fairly recently playing with the Roll for Perception crew, doing some tabletop RPGs, we're doing some Savage Worlds action, and we're doing some Stars Without Number. And you know, most of it is not in character. We're not voicing our characters 100% of the time. In fact, we're not doing it even most of the time. We're talking about what our characters are doing, we're talking about what they're feeling, we're talking about what they're planning. But it all contributes to the role play. It all contributes to the story. So essentially what I'm saying is take inspiration from other people, but blaze your own path, man. You know, decide on what you're good at, and more importantly, decide on what is fun for you, because that's why we do this, right? That's why we play games. That's why we role play. And presumably, if you are watching this video, like I said, because you're looking for inspiration or advice on making your own roleplay content on YouTube or Twitch or wherever the hell you want to put it, If that's your motivation here, make sure it's fun. That is like the single most important piece of advice I believe I can give anyone pursuing anything creative. Make sure you're having fun. Don't let it become a chore. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Taste the game, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time.